There is a moment, perhaps you felt it, when someone you once held close stops seeing you. Not in the way a stranger might, with indifference, but in the way a hunter stops seeing prey that has slipped into the shadows. You were once a presence, a voice, a possibility in their mind. Then, without warning, you become static. A silence where there was once noise. And here is the cruel twist. The moment you stop being an option, you become something else entirely. You become valuable. Not in the way love songs or self-help platitudes preach, not through relentless devotion or desperate persuasion, but through absence. Through the sudden, unshakable realization that you are no longer within reach. It defies logic. It mocks fairness. And yet it is one of the darkest, most unspoken truths of human psychology. We do not want what we can have. We want what we can lose. Why? Why does the lover who once took you for granted suddenly wake in the night, haunted by the ghost of your indifference? Why does the employer who overlooked your contributions suddenly scramble to reclaim you the second you walk away? Why does the friend who dismissed your presence suddenly feel the void of your absence like a missing limb? This is not about manipulation. This is not a game. This is about the raw, unsettling mechanics of human desire. How the mind assigns worth not through reason, but through loss. Through the terror of something slipping away forever. Consider this. A child ignores a toy until another child reaches for it. A partner grows distant until the threat of losing you becomes real. A boss dismisses your potential until you hand in your resignation. The pattern is everywhere, hiding in plain sight. It is the shadow side of attachment, the unspoken law of scarcity that governs our deepest fears and longings. But here is the question that claws at the fabric of your understanding. If your value is only recognized in your absence, were you ever truly seen at all? And worse, if you must disappear to be valued, what does that say about the nature of love, respect, and power in a world that only wakes up when something is gone? This is not a lesson in playing hard to get. This is not about withholding affection to provoke desire. This is about something far more unsettling. The realization that you have been living inside an illusion, one where your worth is determined by others' willingness to choose you. But what if the opposite is true? What if the moment you stop begging to be chosen is the moment you become undeniable? What if the second you refuse to be an option is the second you become irreplaceable? The answer lies in the dark psychology of sudden value, a force that shapes relationships, careers, and even the way we see ourselves. It is a force that thrives on absence, on silence, on the unbearable weight of what is no longer there. And the deeper you dig, the more you realize this is not just about how others perceive you. This is about how you perceive yourself. Because the most terrifying question of all is this: if you only matter when you're gone, who were you when you stayed? The answer will change everything. You are standing at the edge of a paradox. The more you try to prove your worth, the less you are valued. The harder you fight to be seen, the more you disappear. It is a cruel arithmetic, one where devotion subtracts from desire, where availability divides your significance. Why does this happen? Because human desire does not follow logic. It follows the silent, subterranean laws of psychology. Laws that have been dissected by philosophers, psychologists, and mystics for centuries. The scarcity principle. Why we want what we can't have. In 1975, psychologist Robert Cialdini identified the scarcity principle, a cognitive bias that makes us assign greater value to things that are rare, fleeting, or at risk of being lost. This is not just a quirk of consumer behavior. It is a fundamental driver of human attachment. A lover who feels secure in your presence may grow complacent until the moment they sense you slipping away. A boss who assumes your loyalty may undervalue you until you threaten to leave. A friend who takes you for granted may ignore you until they realize you've stopped reaching out. Scarcity does not create real value. It creates perceived value. And that perception is enough to rewrite someone's entire emotional calculus. But scarcity alone does not explain the deeper, more unsettling truth. We are conditioned to chase what retreats from us. The shadow of attachment. Freud, Jung, and the fear of loss. Sigmund Freud once wrote that the loss of love is the most powerful form of anxiety. Carl Jung took it further, arguing that what we suppress in ourselves, we chase in others. If you have ever felt invisible in a relationship, it may be because you were too available, too willing to sacrifice your own boundaries in exchange for validation. This is the paradox of pursuit. The more you try to secure someone's affection, the more you teach them that your love has no cost. The more you tolerate neglect, the more you tolerate neglect. More you confirm that you do not require respect. You become predictable, and predictability is the enemy of desire. Nietzsche's will to power. Why withdrawal creates dominance. Friedrich Nietzsche understood something brutal about human nature. Power is not taken, it is surrendered. When you make yourself an option, you place the power of choice in someone else's hands. But when you withdraw, you force a reckoning. The lover who once ignored your texts now checks their phone obsessively. The employer who dismissed your requests now scrambles to negotiate. The friend who took your loyalty for granted now wonders what they did wrong. This is not manipulation, it is psychological gravity. When you remove your presence, you create a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. The existential twist. Sartre, Frankl, and the illusion of external validation. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that hell is other people, not because they are cruel, but because we allow them to define us. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, discovered that those who survived the camps were not the physically strongest, but those who held onto an internal sense of meaning. Here lies the hidden tragedy. If your value is only recognized when you walk away, then you were never truly valued. You were merely convenient. And this raises a darker question. How many of your relationships, your efforts, your sacrifices were built on the illusion that your worth could be earned through endurance? The answer is uncomfortable, because the moment you realize this, you also realize you have been playing a game where the rules were designed to keep you chasing. But what if you stop playing? The game is rigged, but you don't realize it until you've already lost. Every time you waited for a text that never came, every time you swallowed your pride to keep the peace, every time you dimmed your light to avoid making someone uncomfortable, you were reinforcing a silent, devastating rule. Your worth is negotiable. And the consequences run deeper than you think. The neurological trap. How your brain rewires itself to seek validation. Neuroscience reveals an uncomfortable truth. The brain craves certainty, even if that certainty is pain. When you repeatedly tolerate disrespect, your mind begins to interpret it as normal. Dopamine, the same neurotransmitter associated with pleasure, also fires in anticipation of reward. This means the intermittent reinforcement of someone's occasional attention can become addictive, like a gambler hooked on sporadic wins. The more you endure emotional breadcrumbs, the harder it becomes to walk away. You don't just want to walk away. You don't just want. You're neurologically conditioned to need the resolution they withhold. The social mirror, how culture teaches us to beg for scraps. From fairy tales to rom-coms, we are fed the same poisonous narrative. Love is earned through suffering. The princess must prove herself worthy before the prince sees her. The underdog must endure humiliation before earning respect. The loyal friend must weather neglect before being chosen. These stories are not innocent. They are psychological traps, teaching us that our value must be validated by someone else's approval. But here's the truth they don't tell you. If you have to beg for a seat at the table, you've already been seated at the wrong one. The silent erosion. How being an option destroys your sense of self every time you allow yourself to be treated as expendable. You chip away at your own identity. You second-guess your instincts. Maybe I'm overreacting. You rationalize mistreatment. They're just busy. You shrink to fit spaces that were never meant for you. This is how people wake up one day and don't recognize themselves. This is how potential fades into quiet desperation. The ripple effect. How one-sided dynamics poison everything. The damage doesn't stop with you. Tolerating disrespect teaches others how to treat you, and by extension, how to treat others. The partner who takes you for granted will repeat the pattern with someone else. The boss who exploits your loyalty will do the same to the next employee. The friend who ignores your boundaries will assume everyone else are negotiable. By staying, you don't just harm yourself, you become an accomplice in a cycle of devaluation. The ultimate irony: the more you tolerate, the less you exist. Here's the brutal punchline. The people who treat you as an option don't hate you. They simply don't see you. And the longer you stay in that shadow, the more you vanish. What if the moment you stopped negotiating your worth was the moment you became real to them and to yourself? The moment you stop asking, why don't they want me? And start asking, why am I begging to be wanted? That is the moment everything changes. This is not about playing games. This is not about revenge. This is about reclaiming the power you never should have surrendered. The shift from external validation to irreversible self-worth, Viktor Frankl wrote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. That space is where your freedom lives. Stop negotiating your presence. If someone only notices you when you're leaving, they don't value you. They value the comfort you provided. Delete the asterisks next to your worth. No more I'll be enough, if, or maybe they'll change when. You are not a conditional clause in someone else's story. Become a ghost in their machine. The second you refuse to react, to plead, to perform, you disrupt the entire system, built to keep you chasing. Reckoning nature abhors a vacuum, and human psychology is no different. When you remove your attention, you create an absence, and absence is the loudest presence of all. Silence is the most powerful reply. No declarations, no explanations, just disappearance. Let them fill the silence with their own realization. Indifference is the ultimate rebellion, not hatred, not anger. Those still imply emotional investment. True power lies in becoming a closed door. Let them feel the full weight of your absence. If they return, it must be on your terms. If they don't, you've already won. The rebirth. Building a self that cannot be ignored. This is not about them. This was never about them. This is about you, the version of you that exists beyond anyone's approval. Reconstruct your identity outside their gaze. Who are you when no one is watching? What do you love that they never cared about? Become the prize, not the participant. Let them wonder if they're worthy of you, not the other way around. Let your withdrawal be permanent, unless met with undeniable proof, not promises. Words are currency in a system designed to keep you indebted. Demand action. The final test? Will you choose yourself? Here is the truth they don't want you to know. You were never the one who needed to prove your worth. They were. The moment you walk away is the moment you expose the lie, that you were ever the one who had to earn love, respect, or attention. But this is not a one-time act. This is a daily rebellion. A refusal to crawl back to the table where you were once crumbs. The question is, are you ready to become the loss they never recover from? You've been asking the wrong question this entire time. It was never, how do I make them see my worth? The real question, the one that changes everything. It is, why did you ever give someone the power to decide it for you? This is the core of the illusion, the grand deception. The reason their sudden attention felt like victory when it was actually surrender. The mirror cracked. You were never the one being chosen every time you waited for a call. Every time you twisted yourself into something more palatable. Every time you mistook their fleeting interest for love. You were not proving your worth. You were proving theirs. By chasing them, you confirmed their own unspoken belief. I must be valuable, because someone is fighting this hard for me. But here is the truth that will dismantle everything. The moment you stop fighting, their value collapses, because their worth was never real. It was a reflection of your pursuit. The inversion of power. What happens? When you become the judge, imagine this shift. Instead of do they want me? You ask, do they meet my standards? Instead of why don't they care? You ask, why did I ever care about someone who doesn't? Instead of fearing their rejection, you realize their indifference was the gift you didn't recognize. This is not about ego. This is about the fundamental reordering of reality. When you withdraw your attention, you do not lose them. You reveal them. Their panic, their sudden efforts, their late-night "I miss you" texts. Those are not proof of your worth. They are proof of your power. The final lesson. Love is not earned. It is recognized. You have been taught that love is something to be won. A prize for good behavior. A reward for patience. But the ancient Greeks had a word for true love. Agape. A love that is given freely, not traded like currency. If someone only values you when you're leaving, that is not love. That is Stockholm Syndrome. If I turned syndrome. Someone only notices you when you're gone, that is not connection. That is withdrawal symptoms. Real love does not play hide and seek with your sanity. The choice that defines your life. You stand now at the edge of two paths. The old way, begging for a love that was never designed to fill you. Measuring your worth in someone else's fleeting attention. The rebellion. Becoming the sun, not the planet in orbit around someone else's light. The tragedy is not that they didn't see you. The tragedy is that you didn't either. The last words you ever need: close your eyes, breathe, and say this to the person you once begged to love you. Thank you for showing me what I was willing to tolerate. Thank you for teaching me the cost of my own silence. But most of all, thank you for leaving that space empty. Because it was only when you were gone that I finally saw who was meant to stand there. Now open your eyes.